Hi, everyone. I'm Vladimir Jutit. We are watching all the news happening in the United States and around the world. There's a lot to get to, so let's get straight to it. Here are the top stories we're following for you this morning. New data out shows the U.S. added 177,000 jobs last month. We're going to break down what the report means for the state of the economy. And Mike Waltz is out as National Security Advisor, but President Trump announced he plans to nominate him to be ambassador to the UN. Why the White House just chose to make the switch. And the deadline is quickly approaching to upgrade the Real ID ahead of the May 7th deadline. What you need to know when you're heading out the airport next week. This is CBS News 24/7. But first, this morning, we got the first jobs and unemployment numbers since President Trump announced his sweeping international tariffs exactly 1 month ago. The U.S. added 177,000 jobs, which was better than expected. Here's a live look at the markets, which had been seeing steady gains over the past few weeks. That's despite this week's GDP report showing the U.S. economy shrank for the first time in years. So joining us live from the New York Stock Exchange is CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady. Kelly, break down the report for us. You'd sort of signaled this to me yesterday that we had already seen some good job numbers over the past couple of quarters and that we potentially could see them be what we saw today.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you said it. This was better than expected. We were expecting right around 135,000. We got 177,000. There were some revisions to March's report. Remember, that was a big monster beat of over 200,000 jobs. But even with those revisions, it was still strong. It was still within the 12-month average. And when you kind of look at where the growth is coming from, a couple of things stood out to me. Healthcare has remained a very strong sector. We added 51,000 jobs in April. And then there are a couple of sectors that could take a hit in the future with tariffs. So warehousing and transportation, that added 29,000 jobs. Think about it. We saw in those GDP numbers, a lot of imports were coming into the country. Companies were stockpiling. You saw that warehousing number increase. That might not be sustainable. Also, leisure and hospitality saw a bump at 24,000. Then you also think about what we saw from Airbnb this week. They warned of lower demand from the consumer. We've heard from airlines that we could see a dip this summer in people getting out, spending money, maybe pulling back. And then, of course, the other couple things that we always look for, manufacturing down 1,000 jobs. And then remember those Doge layoffs? Some of them are showing up in this report. The government actually lost 9,000 jobs, which tracks. Remember, though, we're going to see that kind of trickle over the next few months. Those folks that took severance, that took deferred layoffs, they don't show up in this report. Overall, though, Vlad, I mean, the market's up right now. Investors are, I think, breathing a little bit of a sigh of relief that we still have a strong labor market.
All right. So let's talk about what the numbers could potentially tell us about the president's tariffs. Would we see that reflected in a jobs report?
So think about this. This is April. This is when the big tariff announcements happened, the White House's reciprocal tariffs, and then sort of just all of this back and forth. The numbers here don't reflect that businesses are slowing down yet, that they aren't hiring, that they're doing mass layoffs. Anecdotally, Vlad, though, I mean, we do know from talking to small businesses, from listening to corporate earnings calls, that companies are entering a wait-and-see mode. So, yes, this is a good report, but there's sort of an asterisk for me as I was reading it that there's a lot of different places where you could see pullback over these next few months if we don't get trade deals. And I will highlight this week we got a couple of other labor market reports. We saw jobless claims jump, surge. That means more people filing for unemployment last week. And then we also saw that people are taking longer to find a job if they're laid off. So not cause for panic yet, but a little bit of cracks. So that's why I'm looking forward to seeing those next few months come in, especially if we don't get any trade deals.
Yeah. All right. We'll be watching. Kelly O'Grady live for us at the New York Stock Exchange instead of Studio 55. Kelly, always great to see you. All right, let's bring in CBS News White House correspondent Willie James Inman, who is traveling with the president in West Palm Beach, Florida. So, Willie James, how is the administration responding to the jobs report?
Hey there, Vlad. Good to be with you from a rainy West Palm Beach, Florida. Well, the White House is celebrating this jobs report with the U.S. adding some 177,000 jobs. In fact, we just got a statement from the White House press secretary. She says in the statement, she says, this is the second month in a row where the jobs report has beat expectations. And she goes on to say that we are continuing to rise and the labor force participation is increasing. The labor secretary, I'll point out, essentially said that celebrated President Trump's call and move to bring investment back to the United States. Remember, the White House has oftentimes talked about that investment from tech companies like Apple and others that would bring about perhaps thousands of jobs down the road. But as Kelly pointed out perfectly, we have yet to see how the tariffs will affect the job market. But for now, the White House is celebrating this news with 177,000 jobs added last month.
So as you know, Willie James, Trump posted on Truth Social this morning saying that he's taking away Harvard's tax-exempt status. Break that down for us.
Yeah, that's right. This is something that has been floated for the past several weeks. Remember, there's been this back and forth, this spat between Harvard and the administration. In fact, the administration taking away some of the funding for Harvard and then Harvard suing to fight against that. We do have, of course, the president's statement there, but we also have the statement from Harvard pointing out that there's no legal basis for this move to take the tax-exempt status of this university, which benefits thousands of students. They go on to say it's such an unprecedented action and it would endanger our ability to carry out our educational mission. I'll point out that some 2 million organizations across the United States, churches and nonprofit organizations, universities included in that, receive that tax-exempt status. But the White House says that this move would be separate from the president's call, that the IRS would independently review this status. It remains unclear what legal basis the White House or the administration is using to remove this status from Harvard. But it's certainly a fight that Harvard probably will perhaps pursue in the legal avenue with a type of lawsuit down the road, though, Vlad.
All right, and finally, Willie James, let's talk about the news we first reported yesterday. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz is out in that role. He's now being nominated as UN ambassador. If you're not, if the president isn't happy with you, why the soft landing?
Yeah, well, the situation is that Mike Waltz, the now outgoing National Security Advisor, is highly respected by the president and some others within the administration. That's why he wasn't ousted. He wasn't escorted out of the building. He got picked for this, I guess you could say, a high-profile position to be a UN ambassador. That certainly would require Senate approval, though. But it really speaks volumes about how well-liked Mike Waltz is by the president and those close to him. But still, nonetheless, he fell out of favor, at least a little bit, though, after that Signal chat where he inadvertently added a journalist to that chat where sensitive military information about a strike against the Houthis was discussed. That, of course, happened several weeks ago. But still, nonetheless, the White House moving forward with this nomination. In the interim, at least, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, can add another title to his job role, where he will be serving as the National Security Advisor on top of other roles, including his job as Secretary of State, Vlad.
All right, Willie James Inman, thank you very much. Appreciate you. Let's continue the discussion. Let's bring in former National Security Advisor, General H.R. McMaster. He's also a CBS News foreign policy and national security contributor. So, General, good to see you, my friend. This is the first major shakeup of the Trump administration. You served in that role. I just want to get your take on Signal Gate, as it's been called, and if you, when it happened, an inadvertent mistake, or you're surprised by the fact that Waltz wasn't removed immediately after this?
Hey, Vlad, I remember when we talked, I said, hey, it's a mistake. It's terrible. What they should just do is say, okay, it was terrible. We made a mistake. We're never going to do anything like this again. What were we thinking? And I asked the question rhetorically at the time: is the country better off or worse off? If Mike Waltz leaves, and worse off, really. I mean, I think he was doing a good job. I mean, Mike Waltz understood what his role is. His role is to get the president best advice, to get the president multiple options. But when you're effective at doing that. And when you're fighting to do that, people who don't want to give the president multiple options, people who want to manipulate decisions to advance their own agenda, their own worldview in the area of foreign policy, they begin to resent the National Security Advisor. And I think much more than Signalgate, Vlad, that was really the dynamic here.
Yeah, it does strike me, General, that the Mike Waltz, along with his deputy, Alex Wong, who's a lifelong conservative, has served under multiple conservative presidential administrations, were probably, if you look at the way the administration is shaping up, two of the more astute and perhaps even level-headed and very aware of the roles that they played when it came to national security. In other words, Mike Waltz is a highly decorated soldier, just somebody that you would want when you're trying to figure out some of the geopolitical strategies and the risks that the United States are involved in now. And so then what does the future look like? I know that Secretary Marco Rubio is now wearing this hat, but conceivably just how well could you do? I mean, we've talked about this before, even going back to my ROTC training. I've always, you have one job and you do that one job well. How well could the Secretary of State also act as National Security Advisor? It's a really big job.
Yeah, you really can't do both jobs, Vlad. And the thing is, the National Security Advisor is the only person in the national security foreign policy establishment who has the president as his or her only client. And so you're there, all day, every day, and your job is to staff the president, make sure the president is prepared for any engagement on foreign policy. You have to run a process that gets best advice to the president, and again, gets him those multiple options. You have to communicate the president's decisions and actions, not just to the State Department, but to every department and agency that has a hand in foreign policy. You have to help the president foster unity of effort with allies and partners, and you have to lead an organization, the National Security Council staff, to provide them with, what I'm sure you learned at Army ROTC, provide them with purpose, motivation, and direction. And so you can't do all that and run the State Department. I mean, of course, Henry Kissinger did it for a while, and he once told me, he had a great sense of humor, actually. He said, the relationship between the State Department and the National Security Council or the Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor has never been better than when I held both positions, And but I think this is going to be temporary. I hope the president picks somebody, he has great confidence in, obviously, and who understands his or her role. What you're supposed to do for the president's National Security Advisor. But as you alluded to, Vlad, there'll be people, man. The knives will be out for whoever that is, because there are people who have this worldview that is based on a desire to retrench, to disengage.
Right.
These are, the people who call themselves the restrainers, and they want to cut the legs out from the NSC staff and the National Security Advisor because they've been effecting kind of a slow takeover of the Department of Defense, for sure.
Well, I mean, the fact that you have somebody who's a right-wing flamethrower who says extremely controversial things, who can influence the president into deciding whether or not he should keep or fire somebody serving under him is already incredible. So last question for you, General, is should the president instead have asked Pete Hegseth to resign as defense secretary? Was the wrong man let go?
Well, it's all up to the president, right? I mean, everybody there serves at the pleasure of the president. The president has to have confidence, trust in whoever's in that circle. I'll tell you, Vlad, I want them all to succeed, man. I mean, but I'll tell you that what concerns me, as you already alluded to, is this kind of worldview. And it counts against people like Alex Wong. It counts against people like Mike Waltz that they served in previous Republican administrations, because many of the people who have the president's ear, and as you mentioned, the people who are in his ear whispering, hey, this person's a globalist, this person is obstructing your real agenda. That's not Trump's agenda. That's their agenda to retrench and disengage from complex challenges abroad. They blame these people. They blame the so-called neocons, anybody they label as a neocon, for the problems in the world, more than they blame people like Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping or the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. So I think that's what's kind of playing out here, is this battle for the future of the Trump administration's foreign policy.
Yeah, it's an excellent point, General. General H.R. McMaster, always great to have a conversation with you, sir. Thank you very much.
Hey, great to be with you, Vlad. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, the Tennessee Highway Patrol has released new body cam footage of a 2022 traffic stop of Kilar Garcia. He is the man, you'll recall, that was mistakenly, according to the U.S. government, deported to a Salvadoran prison. Listen to this.
You got a bunch of people in here, don't you?
It's one for sit. Yes. Go back to work.
Gotcha. Where are you working at?
Where?
Where?
San Luis, Missouri.
Missouri?
Yes, sir.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I'm from to Maryland. So I come in from to San
So
Luis.
in the body cam footage, Garcia tells police he was driving the 8 people in his vehicle from Houston to Temple Hills, Maryland, to perform construction work. The Department of Homeland Security says he was suspected of human trafficking. He was not arrested or charged with any crime. I want to bring in Department of Justice correspondent Scott McFarland. Scott, so the DOJ has been trying to frame this incident as a way to justify Garcia's deportation, but we just said he wasn't charged with a crime. He wasn't charged with human trafficking.
Yeah, he was issued a citation for a traffic violation after that footage was recorded. This is going to be mechanized, and to a degree has already been mechanized by the Trump administration for the second of 2 battles over Kilar Garcia's detention. There's the legal battle, but there's also that political battle. And they have said that this video gives more evidence that this was a righteous deportation, that this was somebody who was face-to-face with law enforcement at one point. The political battle has an uncertain future, but the legal battle has a date certain. Vlad, there's going to be a hearing or deadlines next week requiring the administration to explain why Abrego Garcia was mistakenly deported to that Salvadoran prison March 15th, and why he has not been returned to the U.S. as ordered by the Maryland federal judge. That's the legal battle, but the political battle is going to be infused by this newly obtained dash cam and body cam footage of that traffic stop some time ago.
And you'll obviously know this, Scott, a Trump-appointed federal judge just ruled the president's use of Alien Enemies Act to deport Venezuelans is unlawful. So talk more about that.
That's in Brownsville, Texas, the Southern District of Texas courthouse, where a Trump-appointed federal judge has ruled those Alien Enemies Act deportations, those 18th century emergency war power deportations, are unlawful. An overreach by the executive branch when the United States has not been invaded, according to the 36-page order from this judge. It puts a halt to Alien Enemies Act deportations in that Southern District of Texas, but it also lays down a marker for the forthcoming legal battles, potentially back at the Supreme Court over the Alien Enemies Act. One other note, though, Vlad, the administration has been expediting transfers of would-be deportees to Texas and to Louisiana, where some would say that the judges may be more sympathetic to the administration's cause there. This judge in the Southern District of Texas was not.
All right, Scott McFarland reporting from Washington for us this morning. Thank you, Scott. Longer lines can be expected next week at airports across the country as TSA enforces the Real ID deadline. We're going to tell you what you need to know next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Vatican City firefighters are preparing for the conclave to find a new pope this morning. They installed a chimney that signals the election of a successor. It's a key moment in the conclave set for May 7th. Cardinals' ballots are burned after every 2 rounds of voting, and then the white smoke obviously means that a new pope has been chosen. A black smoke signals an inconclusive vote. We will, of course, have full coverage of the process all next week, so join us for that. Meanwhile, the TSA is warning about that Real ID deadline coming this Wednesday. That's when you're going to need the upgraded identification card to get onto a flight or into some government buildings. CBS News senior transportation correspondent Chris Van Cleve joins us now from Phoenix. So, Chris, starting Wednesday, just describe what's going to happen to people if they show up without a Real ID or without a passport.
Okay, so the Real ID, Vlad, if you're looking at your driver's license, it's going to have a black or gold star in the upper corner. That's a Real ID. You'll need to present that at TSA. If you don't have one or you don't have a passport, you have a legacy ID. there is a secondary identification verification process TSA can use, but that can be time intensive, and they may not be able to verify everyone. So there's some potentials here for delays and confusion. People with the legacy ID, it may take them longer to get through the checkpoint. So if you don't leave enough time, you could miss your flight. And the TSA says in a small percentage of cases, if they can't verify the identification through that other means, they may deny entry to the checkpoint, and thus that person wouldn't be able to travel that day. The good news here, the passport will work, a military ID will work, a global entry card will work. There are some exceptions. They're posted at tsa.gov if you don't have that real ID.
Oh, so that's interesting, Chris. I didn't realize that. So if you have global entry, you have a global entry number, and it's on your boarding pass, is that enough to get you through the gate with a driver's license?
It's not. When you got your global entry, you got a card like this.
Oh.
You would need to bring the global entry card with you. That is one of the forms of acceptable ID verification.
Ooh, I gotta look for that. All right, so let's talk about the challenges that many people have been facing. I'm trying to get their hands on a real ID ahead of the deadline. I did, unlike Tony DeCopel, who has said that he's not getting one, I actually tried to make an appointment with the DMV. It was really, really difficult here in New York, and ultimately I just decided, you know what, I have a passport. When I lived abroad, traveled with it all the time. I can do that for a couple of weeks, a couple of months until the lines and the bureaucracy settles down.
That's the right thing to do right now, Vlad. Pretty much every state is saying if you don't have a real ID right now and you're having a hard time getting an appointment, use your passport if you have it for a couple of weeks, couple months till it dies down. Depending on the state you're in, there are several states that have full compliance. There are others, like New Jersey that, and Pennsylvania, that are less than a quarter of people are Real ID compliant. So you have to go to the DMV for this, or the agency that issues IDs in your state. And you're going to have to present some additional information than what you normally would. A Social Security card, a birth certificate, 2 forms of proof of residency. So there are specific documents you have to have, and that has tripped people up and have had to make multiple visits. So do your homework before you go. Once you complete that process, they will mail you the ID. You will not leave with it that day. So even if you got in today, Vlad, you wouldn't have that ID before May 7th. So the passport is your best bet between now and whenever you can get into the DMV.
Good advice. Finally, Chris, as you know, travelers are dealing with the second day of delays at Newark Airport, which is a major national and international travel hub. What's the FAA saying?
Yeah, this has really been a troubling week for flyers getting in and out of Newark. It started Monday when there were some technical issues and then staffing issues at air traffic control, the center right outside of Newark. That caused a lot of delays. Then yesterday, air traffic control staffing happened again, and they're having a staffing issue yet again today. That means hundreds and hundreds of flights delayed or canceled. We've seen flights divert this week. The FAA says it is a combination of air traffic control staffing issues and runway construction at Newark that has forced them to slow the arrival rates into the airport. United Airlines is the biggest operator at that airport. United says it had already reduced its schedule around the runway construction. So United is pointing the finger at air traffic control staffing issues for what has really been a headache of a travel experience for people getting in and out of Newark Airport this week. And it's likely to continue all day today.
All right, Chris Van Cleve reporting from Phoenix this morning. Thank you, Chris.
Sure thing.
Sean Diddy Combs' sex trafficking trial gets underway on Monday with the disgraced music mogul's decision to reject a plea deal means for the case. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Welcome back to CBS News 24/7. Here's a look at some of the top stories we're following. President Trump issued an executive order cutting funding for PBS and NPR, citing what he calls bias in their reporting. The broadcasters receive around $500 million through the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. The corporation calls the move, quote, unlawful. PBS and NPR have been preparing for the cut since the president was elected to a second term. Border crossings were at a historic low level last month. Internal federal data obtained by CBS News shows Border Patrol agents apprehended around 8,400 migrants at the southern border who crossed into the U.S. without authorization. Illegal crossings in President Trump's first 3 full months in office are down sharply. The last time the U.S. averaged fewer than 9,000 monthly apprehensions was in the late 1960s. Actor and comedian Russell Brand was granted bail this morning in his rape and sexual assault case. The hearing in London lasted only about 10 minutes. The charges relate to incidents with 4 separate women spanning from 1999 to 2005. Brand denies the allegations. He is due back in court on May 30th. Israel says Iran-backed Houthi rebels may have launched a new missile attack into Yemeni territory in the last few hours. It comes as Israel is accused of launching a drone strike on a ship carrying humanitarian aid. BBC News correspondent Sebastian Usher joins us live from Jerusalem this morning to talk more about this. Sebastian, thanks so much for being with us. What can you tell us about these morning's airstrikes?
Well, these are 2 Houthi missiles that were directed, as has been the case many times in the past few months since essentially the war in Gaza erupted after October the 7th, 2023. 2 missiles. The Israeli military says that it intercepted one and that is investigating what's happened to the other. There's no reports of casualties or damage. So this is kind of the way things normally happen. The Houthis fire the missiles. Some of them do get this far, but it is vanishingly rare for them to get through the IDF's defense system, its air defense system. That doesn't mean that Israel doesn't take very seriously these attempted strikes. There are sirens which go off through all the areas that might be affected. People take shelter briefly when it happens. We've had this happen here a few times. And as you know, of course, the US under President Trump has re-intensified its attacks on Houthi targets in Yemen since he's come into office. The Biden administration was already doing it, but President Trump is doing it even harder. And we've had some of the biggest numbers of casualties in those attacks that we've seen during the whole of this period. So that confrontation, not just between Israel and the Houthis, but also involving the US, that is building. It's certainly not going away.
So what else have you heard, Sebastian, about the suspected Israeli drone attack on a ship transporting humanitarian aid?
Well, essentially, this is a group, the Freedom Flotilla Coalition, which had a ship off the coast of Malta, international waters off the coast of Malta, and they sent us, actually, the BBC, a distress signal late on Thursday night saying that they'd come under attack. And there is video of 2 members of that group in the cabin as there's smoke around them. They're coughing. They say that a fire broke out, that there was damage to the hull. The Maltese say that they were able to put out the fire, that everyone is safe on board. But the activists say they can't be 100% sure, but they very strongly suspect that Israel is behind this. We've heard nothing from Israel. We have contacted Israeli officials for comment. There's been no comment so far, but that's to be expected. So as I say, the activists believe that Israel has done this in order to prevent any aid being brought to Gaza. The naval blockade has been on Gaza for a very long time. And of course, the situation for people in Gaza has become even more urgent with the blockade that Israel's imposed for the past 2 months now of any aid coming in from any source, land, sea or air.
Fascinating. BBC News correspondent Sebastian Usher, thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, let's take you out to Massachusetts now, where a key witness in the Karen Reed murder trial is expected back on the stand this morning. Jen McCabe's testimony began Tuesday, and cross-examination is expected to wrap up today. Earlier on CBS News Mornings, legal analyst Ricky Kleeman explained what the defense is looking to establish.
The cross-examination, which is being done by Mr. Jackson, is really to show that she is trying to hide something, if not a lot of something, and she is trying to embellish the story about what Karen Reed did and what Karen Reed said.
Karen Reed is charged with hitting her Boston police officer boyfriend with her SUV and leaving him to die. She maintains her innocence and claims she was framed. You can watch the gavel-to-gavel coverage on CBS News Boston. Meanwhile, Sean Diddy Combs has rejected an offer to plead guilty to 3 federal charges during the final pretrial hearing. That means the high-profile sex trafficking and racketeering case will get underway on Monday. Let's bring in CBS News legal reporter Katrina Kaufman. Good to see you. So what stood out to you in this pretrial hearing that happened yesterday?
The biggest takeaway is what you just mentioned, that Sean Combs is not going to take this plea deal that was offered to him by the government. We don't know the terms, but we know it would have been a lighter sentence, and he does face life in prison for the racketeering charge in this trial. So he affirmed in court that he was of clear mind, that he had discussed it with his attorneys. He turned that down, and the trial will start on Monday.
So what do we expect with the jury selection process, which begins on Monday?
Yeah, so Vlad, it's a kind of complicated jury selection process. They started it this week with written questionnaires to narrow down the jury pool. Then the judge is bringing in at least 50 jurors a day. Next week, there's going to be 2 courtrooms, 2 juror rooms. They'll be brought into one for sequestered questioning. And an important thing that came up in court was originally the judge didn't plan for Sean Combs to be in the room, but his lawyer asserted his constitutional right to participate in his own trial. So the judge will allow him to be there. Then there will be more open questioning in the other courtroom, and they hope to whittle down this jury to 12 jurors and 6 alternates by Wednesday, I believe.
So you'll be in the courthouse next week?
Yes, I will.
All right. We'll be checking in with you. Let's talk about Luigi Mangione. His lawyers are urging a judge to drop this New York State murder charge. What do we know about that?
So what Mangione's attorneys are arguing here is there are multiple cases against Luigi Mangione, including both in federal and state court in New York. And what they're saying is there are dueling theories of these cases that could harm Luigi Mangione's constitutional rights in this trial. She says that it's double jeopardy for there to be 2 different criminal trials proceeding against him, that it could violate his due process rights and his right not to self-incriminate. Because there are 2 different theories here, Vlad. In the state case, he's being accused of terrorism charges, but in the federal one, it's of murdering and stalking the United Healthcare CEO. So, for example, she said, with the terrorism charge, that relates to targeting a civilian population. But if they argued actually he was going after one man, that would implicate him in the federal case. So she wants the judge to either dismiss the state case or to put it on hold while the federal one proceeds. And it's also interesting they want that one to go first because that's where he could face the death penalty.
Wow, fascinating. There's so many twists and turns in that particular case. It's really interesting. Katrina Kaufman, great to have you here. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, heavy rains and flash flooding over the last few days in Oklahoma have caused a section of a road to collapse. Take a look at this video just out of Blanchard, Oklahoma. Residents say the hole was small on Wednesday, but then grew quickly. There's a chance of more rain on the way for the area. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with the first look at the national forecast. Hey, Grant.
Hey, happy Friday, Vlad. Look, yes, still some rain across portions of the central United States, but the pattern's beginning to shift, and that storm threat is going to begin to move to the east as we go through the next couple of days. So bad news for the East Coast, but good news for parts of the country that have seen several rounds of rain, and in cases in Oklahoma, over a half foot of rainfall in just a matter of days, resulting in probably more than just that sinkhole that we showed you there. Across the country today, we've got thunderstorms stretching from the southern plains all the way into the Ohio Valley. A little cooler on the backside of that storm system moving through the upper Midwestern states, but pleasant conditions into the Pacific Northwest. Meanwhile, very warm conditions all up along the eastern seaboard. Let me talk a little bit more about this storm threat that we're seeing across the central United States that is beginning to slowly move to the east. You see on the radar there some heavier rainfall moving through portions of the central United States out towards Little Rock. This storm complex will continue to slowly move to the east, and just look at this rather large area of this enhanced threat for severe storms, really from Texas all the way up through the mid-Mississippi Valley and then up into the Ohio Valley for later on this afternoon, for when we will see that threat for some stronger storms later today. Let's talk more about at least the development of this changing weather pattern, where the severe threat has really been through the central United States into the Ohio Valley. Today, you've got that Level 3 out of 5 threat, that enhanced threat for severe storms, mainly damaging winds and large hail. We can't rule out some tornadoes, but the main threat will be those winds and the larger hail. Watch the forecast as we go through the day today. Those storms advance to the east. There will be an area of low pressure that develops. Now, the threat for severe weather will be lower, still a chance for some severe storms, but that low pressure system sort of cuts off from the main pattern, and that will continue to rotate over the Midwestern states, keeping the eastern seaboard in the crosshairs for the chance for rain kind of continuing through Sunday into Monday, and especially for Kentucky on Saturday. We're looking at what will likely be a pretty muddy Kentucky Derby on Saturday. Vlad, back to you.
Oh, boy. All right, Grant, thank you very much. We're following some breaking news out of London where Prince Harry has lost a new legal case. Stick with us. You're going to want to hear all about it. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. We are following some breaking news out of London this morning where Prince Harry has lost his legal challenge over the level of security he receives while in that country. Back in 2020, the British government downgraded the Duke of Sussex's protection arrangements following his decision to step down from royal duties. For more on this, I'm joined by Helena Wilkinson with our partners at the BBC. Helena, what more can you tell us about this ruling?
Well, this ruling was brought by 3 judges here at the Court of Appeal, and they rejected Prince Harry's case that he had brought here to the Court of Appeal. Sir Geoffrey Voss, who was the judge who delivered that judgment in the court behind me, rejecting Prince Harry's appeal to the changes to his security arrangements. Now, you'll recall that Prince Harry left the UK in 2020. He stopped being a working member of the royal family. And after that, his security arrangements when he came to the UK were downgraded. So he has a bespoke arrangement, and it's done on a case-by-case basis. Prince Harry didn't think that was fair, but today he has had his appeal rejected. And let me just give you a bit of a summary of what the judge said in his remarks. He did say that the arguments put forward during a 2-day hearing last month here at the Court of Appeal were powerful, and said it was very clear that Prince Harry felt badly treated by the system. However, the judge said that he found there was no legal basis to challenge Ravek's decision to alter Harry's security. So nothing has changed. Prince Harry's appeal against the High Court decision, which upheld the decision to downgrade his security, that has been rejected. So Prince Harry has lost his case here at the Court of Appeal this afternoon around the security that he receives when he comes to the UK, and so it will continue to be done on a case-by-case basis when he comes to the UK, and he has to give quite a bit of notice when he comes here so that those in charge, the authorities, can make an assessment in some terms of how much protection he does receive.
So, Helena, I guess you obviously know that the prince has been subject to threats from both Al-Qaeda and ISIS. I wonder what the judge or the barrister said when it came to those threats, if they found them to be credible, and does the Duke have any further legal avenues after this?
Yes, well, at the hearing, the 2-day hearing here at the Court of Appeal last month, his barrister stood up in court and argued that Prince Harry had been treated unfairly when it comes to his security. So he doesn't get the automatic security that he did since birth and up until he stopped becoming a working member of the royal family. Your question about whether there's anything next for Prince Harry, well, there is a further step if he did want to take it, and that would be he could go to the Supreme Court here in London. That's the higher court. What he would need to do, though, is he would need to seek permission in order to be able to do that. And those who he needs to seek permission from are the very people, or the very court, rather, that rejected his appeal today at the Court of Appeals. So he can try to seek permission to take it one step further to the higher court, but we have to wait and see whether he will do that.
And finally, Helena, just for the understanding of our American cousins here in the United States, could the king, with just a stroke of his pen, reestablish Harry's security, or is there another mechanism that is responsible for deciding whether members and non-working members of the royal family receive security in the United Kingdom?
Well, it's a good question, and I don't think the King himself can get involved. As far as I know, the decisions around the security to do with members of the royal family and also VIPs who come to the UK, that is done by a committee that is attached to a government home office, and so they will be looking at it. I think there are people within the members of the royal household or royal teams that might be involved in that kind of decision making. But as far as I know, I don't think the King can himself interfere. But in terms of Prince Harry himself, we haven't had any reaction from him so far. But we know that this case in particular for Prince Harry was a really personal case. He has said before that he doesn't feel safe to come to the UK with his family, with his wife Meghan and their 2 young children. And so it'll be interesting to see what his reaction is, if any, later on.
All right, Helena Wilkinson with the BBC. Thank you, Helena, for joining us this morning. Appreciate your reporting. Thank you. All right, we got much more news ahead. Stay with us. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. A beloved California bike shop was lost in the Eaton fire, but that is not stopping the owner from helping people get back on 2 wheels. CBS News Los Angeles reporter Joy Benedict has that story.
There it is. It's here. It is a night many in this community won't forget.
Let's get that palm tree.
Embers rain down on Steve Selenus as he and his family spent hours battling flames with garden hoses, protecting their homes and those of their neighbors during the Eaton fire.
Ember tornado.
But while he stood his ground,
Welcome to Steve's Bike Shop.
his business fell to ash.
We can totally fix that.
All the inventory, anything aluminum was melted.
Steve's bike shop had stood in this Altadena community for decades.
I started working there when I was 14.
But despite the loss, he's not letting the fire deflate his spirit.
The air comes out about as fast as it goes in. So, yeah, needs new inner tubes.
He's now opened up a shop of sorts on his lawn.
My wife is a little not happy.
From his backyard to his front, it is littered with bikes in need of TLC.
This is a mongoose.
But he's not selling these bikes. He's doing what he's done for decades, trying to get his community moving again by fixing what is broken.
And then we turn it around and give it away.
Selenus says most of his customers and neighbors fled the fire without their 2-wheeled accessories. And when he offered to fix up one, he ended up with hundreds of requests and then dozens of donations.
Got used Cannondale.
On this day, he was giving away 3 refurbished bikes to the Eakin family.
We'd ride all over the place, so it was important for us to get them back.
For although time is helping families adjust, it doesn't erase what happened.
How difficult have these last few months been?
Oh, that's a hard question. They've been really hard, actually. I grew up in Altadena. I was born and raised there. I just can't. I'm sorry. I don't know why that affected me so badly.
And sometimes replacing what burned can help with healing.
It turned into something pretty big. It's big.
In the last few months, Selenus has refurbished and rehomed more than 100 used bikes, and he has another 200 waiting in triage.
We have a lot of bikes that we're fixing, and a lot of people that need bikes.
The bikes are donated, the parts to fix them purchased thanks to an online fundraiser. It is a project that fills his time and his heart, but not necessarily his wallet.
The money's going to run out at some point. So yes, we need to start making some money here pretty quick.
So this business owner is hoping to rebuild and start selling again soon.
We're currently looking for a pop-up location.
In the meantime, he says he'll keep filling the lawn and the spirits of his community by fixing what he can and hopefully greasing the wheels of progress. Joy Benedict, CBS News, Altadena, California.
That does it for me, folks, but stay right where you are. After the break, Mugo Diwe is live from San Francisco with all the breaking news from coast to coast. This is CBS News 24/7.